Okay guys, my name is Willow McDonald. If you don't know me, I am the Robin's additional daughter. So I was born in Pontiac, Illinois. That is kind of up by Peoria, Bloomington, that area. And I am the youngest of 6 siblings. My parents actually had me kind of later, so I grew up mostly with my siblings' kids, so my nieces and nephews instead of them. I don't really remember much of my young childhood. I was kind of normal. My parents were still together, so there wasn't really any issues regarding that until I was about 5 years old, and my parents had asked me if I could come into the room because they needed to talk to me. And that's when they asked me, would I rather live with my mom or dad because they're splitting up. And I was so young at that age, and I really didn't understand kind of what they were talking about. And I knew that my mom was staying, so I just chose my mom and ran out the room. Shortly after, my dad did move out, and he moved to Goreville, Illinois, but I continued to live with my mom. Throughout that time, my dad didn't really talk to me. I kind of forgot he existed. He didn't reach out through texts or calls or any birthday cards, so we didn't really have a relationship. And then while I was living with my mom, we did struggle a lot just because it was just me, her, and my sister now. All my brothers are grown up, and she didn't have anyone to kind of rely on. So we were in and out of motels, in and out of people's houses of her friends, just kind of jumping around. So at that point, my mom did find, she did reconnect with my sister's real father, and they began a relationship. It was good because we were able to have a little bit more stability. We were able to pay for a home, rent a home, so we were pretty comfortable. Until one night, my sister's dad had gotten pretty drunk and pretty angry and tried to harm my mom in front of me and my sister. So at that point, my mom was just ready to get me and my sister out of there. So she had called my father and asked if he could come pick me and my sister up. So that same night, he drove all the way from Goreville, Illinois to Pontiac and picked us up and brought us back. But I really didn't kind of know who my dad was at that time. I didn't know how he was living since he had left. So he actually did remarry in that time, and now he had 2 daughters. Not with her, but 2 stepdaughters. So now he has 2 kids, and he's bringing another 2 daughters into the family. It's very hard to adjust to. So I remember not really understanding what all of this was for, but now I like to look back on it and realize that God was kind of working out his plan, and he was placing me exactly where I needed to be. But my sister did end up moving back. We kind of just lived a normal life. We didn't have a lot of, we were pretty financially unstable, still kind of having weeks where we wouldn't have electricity or a couple weeks where we wouldn't have water. So it was just really hard growing up and then trying to keep an image in school. And so I did struggle with that until about my 7th grade when I met a friend that lived across the street, and her family was very connected with a church. They went to church about twice a week, so with me staying there almost every night, I was able to go with her. Although through that time going to church, I still didn't ask any questions. I kind of just went to go because she was going, but I was there. So until about high school, I was going to church normally. I wasn't really doing anything necessarily bad, but I just still wasn't trying to have a relationship with the Lord. Until when my freshman year hit, I kind of started to get into some bad things. I was drinking alcohol because I thought it was cool, or hanging out with boys until 3 in the morning, even so far as to smoking marijuana. I got really, really low in my life. I felt like I had no purpose. I hated myself in a sense, and I just didn't want to be here anymore. So until my sophomore year came around, I remember we had a new teacher. We had a lot of new teachers that year, and one of the new teachers was my study hall teacher. And I didn't know who she was, so I started asking around, and the only thing I really heard about her was she's kind of mean. So it turns out that that teacher was Heather Rotman, and that year, got a great connection with her. She kind of was my safe place. I came into her room any chance I could, other than just study hall, and I would talk to her about any and everything. Well, the next following year, her daughter came, and we became really best friends, me and Natalie. So now not only was I talking to Heather at school, but I was talking to her at home because I would stay the night over there. So then that's why so on Sundays I would now get to come to First Baptist here. So I was still kind of having God, you could see that God kept trying to jump right in front of me, but I still just was not grasping onto it. Well, it was my junior year came around, and I was still in deep, deep sin when I was at school, and I decided to make a dumb decision and bring marijuana in a book bag, which was in my car. And so that kind of got the school involved, and it led me it kind of just hit me in the face. It kind of was a realization that I can't keep living the way I am, and I'm not invincible, and just because my parents think it's okay, there's a lot of other people that respect me, and I just don't want to let them down. So quickly after that, I tried changing my ways. I started kind of reaching out to Heather and Darren of how I can better myself and what I can do, but I still didn't reach out for the Lord. I still was just struggling in my own sins and struggling mentally, so it was kind of a hard transition until my senior year came around, and that was the year that, everyone loves. It's supposed to be the best year of high school. You're going out and for all the college visits, and you're getting senior prom and all that great stuff. I was on a college visit with all of my friends. We were actually in West Kentucky, and it was a short drive back, and I had gotten on Facebook, and I saw that my stepmom had made a post about my sister being missing. I instantly felt like something was wrong, but I kind of just let it go, and I talked to them when I got home, and we didn't really know any information, so we went to bed that night. Then the next morning, my dad had woken me up, and he had told me that someone had taken my sister's life. It was very hard for me to accept that, because she was the only sibling that I was that was in a house with me, that I got to grow up with, since all my other siblings were a lot older. So I just knew at that point I needed to do whatever I could to be safe, and I just didn't want my parents to lose another child at a young age. Throughout that, trying to accept that passing, I did start leaning more towards on my peers. And that's when one day, it was my senior homecoming, the next day, I had came into the Rotman's house crying because my dad, I just got off the phone with him, and he told me, Willow, I want you to go move back up north with your mom, because your stepmom, she's not taking this lightly, and I'm scared that you're gonna come home after school one day and find her hurt. So those emotions were running pretty strong. I got off the phone and I went inside, and that's when Darren popped the joke and he asked, well, did you and the boyfriend of the week break up? And I said, no, actually my dad he's ready for me to move up north. He's struggling with this. He knows that I'm struggling with this, so he kind of wants me to get out. So it was kind of like a running situation. There wasn't really much he could do for me. So Darren prayed with me that night, and I went back upstairs, and not too long after, him and Heather had called me back down and asked if I would like to live with them. So of course, because I already felt like part of their family, I said yes, and that same day, we loaded up the Yukon, went to my house, and packed everything we could, and I moved in that night. Since then, Darren did kind of have a talk with me that night and said, there's going to be times where you want to run, but don't do it. And there was many times I wanted to run, not because they were crazy people, but because it was a very big difference. My parents, they not only had no rules for me, but they had no relationship with the Lord at all. They kind of almost just didn't want to talk about it. So coming into a family who had very strong beliefs and a lot of expectations, it kind of was a big struggle. But I went to the ski trip with my friends, Kennedy and Natalie, and that's where I was sitting in the back of the whole room, and I remember Clay saying something that just really stuck my heart. And that's when I knew that I was ready to give my life to the Lord. So that night I can't remember if I talked to Darren or Cliff, but I talked to one of them, and I knew it was time for me to completely change, ask the Lord for my forgiveness, and completely just go for it this time. Instead of all those signs passing in front of me and just saying maybe later or I'll change when I'm ready, that was kind of the moment for me. So after that, I remember kind of just wanting to absolutely go to everything I could. I kind of make jokes. I would hate to miss church on a Sunday. So the way that it completely changed my personality around you, where I wasn't running from those situations like I was in the past. But now, from being saved, I'm able to look for happiness in the Lord. I'm able to find fulfillment in Him. I've also been able to go on 2 Chicago mission trips since then, and just recently this Italy mission trip this summer, which was something that I would have never thought in a million years that I would get to go to, not only because I didn't have a relationship with the Lord, but because my parents could never financially be able to do something kind of like that for me. So it was just an amazing thing to be a part of. And I remember on the bus ride home after a long day, Darren looked at me and said, "Is this something that you would expect from 5 years ago? Or would you expect to be here 5 years ago today?" And I just remember saying, absolutely not, but I'm so grateful that I am. And for that, I have found that having the Lord in my heart, He has completely just changed the way that I view life and how so I'm not good at ending this. This is starting my testimonies, but that is the end of it. Just yeah.